it's so warm. Huh. I don't know if I like it or not, but anyway, so, welcome to the board here on statement once again. Oh, wow, first things first, I would like to say congratulations to the Detroit Tigers. Even though last night was wildly disappointing loss, let's be real, that team has nothing to be ashamed about. It's an amazing season. Amazing season. I mean, again, beginning of August, the likelihood of them getting to this point was less than 1 in 1,000. So, you, gosh, man, Riley probably should have stole second in the last game. He could have then scored a run and tied the game. There's a bunch of what ifs, though, and the fact of the matter is they did so many things so well to get to this point that it's just unfair. It is unfair to go through what ifs or pitching change things, or it's not fair. That team did an excellent job in execution and everything. I mean, it was outstanding to watch. True, really inspirational, and that's rare. I mean, especially when you consider the budgets and all that stuff. They're all rookies and shit. Again, though, there's something to be said about a flat budget of non-hierarchical or virtually non-hierarchical, like not financially hierarchical. I mean, people have to have their roles, but their roles don't have to be superior or inferior. If that makes sense. It should make sense. It should be a very realizable system where just because you're president doesn't mean that you're superior to the vice president. You have unique roles which include the certain powers of superiority, but it doesn't intrinsically make you superior. Your wealth doesn't make you superior. You know, that needs to be realized. It's because, you know, the core enabler of exploitation is, yeah, that class society, the belief that in superiority, the hierarchy, the belief in an eternal, intrinsic, natural God or whatever prescribed hierarchy really is the nastiest one. That's the one that enabled the critical race theory. You know, and what is critical race theory really is, that was a way to convenience the monopolists that had utilized the cotton gin to amass enormous amounts of human beings who they didn't personally know. And so the older bondage laws that, you know, governed chattel slaves were no longer tenable to the monopolists that had become outstandingly wealthy thanks to the cotton gin and slavery. Yeah, they had influenced legislation in order to convenience them, and just pretty much black equals slave. I mean, the chattel system is not ideal, but it's essentially the employee-employer fucking relationship. I guess, and let's be real. I mean, you could argue that the chattel relationship is better because you actually get housing and food and shit. You know? And then in Europe, they're like, oh, fuck land tenure rights, get the hell out of this country. And go over some other people and send us all the resources. I mean, this system of you over, now you fuck someone else over, needs to stop. It's draining the resources in totality. There is an enormous inefficiency when you silo resources and you isolate them. It's incredibly inefficient. Every time you move resources, every time a resource moves from one hand to the next, I mean, there's an inefficiency there. And when you're, oh my gosh, digitizing money and then giving all of it to just like a couple people, that is just ludicrous. It's not even a real resource. It's a resource. It's a meritocratic resource that is being distributed in a scamocracy. I mean, and I love that term, and I'd like to think that I've coined it. It's the best way to describe what is the United States government right now, and in fact the United States society. It's a scamocracy. Everything's just BS, and security theater is, you know, think about this. Legislation is enacted with the intent of utilizing it for embezzlement, and then it's sold to you as though it's necessary. You know, think about the BS TSA crap. The fact is like, none of these things are really solving the problems because they're not intended to solve the problems. They're intended to siphon money out of the federal government and shove it into pockets. So whenever there's an opportunity to pretend like there is a legitimate expenditure of money that could go to some contractor and just comes out of the blue, like, you know, there are an innumerable number of examples, you know, in the rehab industry. You know, anytime that there's this like sudden social chaos, it's immediately exploited for embezzlement purposes. All of these BS classes and credentials, you know what I mean? Like, you take a 1 day class and all of a sudden now, at the same time, there are a lot of things that you can learn in a single day. The problem is we are in this like rubber stamping, cronyistic, you know, multi-tiered system where if you are in the top echelon, you get full realization of rights and you get to exploit your resources in order to ensure that you get the best treatment across the board. If you're in the second tier, like the middle class tier, you are actually going to go to jail if you commit a crime. But you generally get your rights, although you don't get the beautifully curated and catered version of the society that the A tier does. But then, eventually, if you don't have the resources, and that can happen in a ton of ways. If you're in the middle class and you have a series of misfortunate events and you suddenly don't have the finances and like you lose your insurance, this is a good example. This is how this society is at least 3-tiered and how significantly different that third tier is. Let's say you suddenly have a series of misfortunate events, lose your insurance on your car. Then you have your car parked and someone breaks into it. Let's say in there you have a prescription and they steal the prescription. But if you call the cops, they're going to find out you don't have any insurance and they're going to impound the vehicle because you're a nobody and you're poor now. They might even arrest you. But if you don't call the cops, then the prescription, depending on what it is, probably won't be filled, you know, and that could be a severe problem based on your, you know, if it's a controlled substance. So, yeah, I mean, it's been, poverty is a crime now, and it's also, you know, you have to be perpetually paying into the system, otherwise you are made homeless and then made a literal crime. The thing is, though, is that you get to pay so much just to live now. I mean, between property taxes, and if you're not paying property tax, you're paying rent, and you have an income tax, and you have your your sales tax. And the thing is like, what are we really getting? Our society was set up with a ton of existing infrastructure, very valuable existing infrastructure, and instead of taking this enormous amount of money that's being provided through taxation and continuing to build that infrastructure over the past 40 years, Reagan, Nixon, LBJ, I mean, we just keep going on and on. I mean, so first, gosh, go on and on and on. But, you know, the military-industrial complex of just siphoning money upward, and then you have the Chinese manufacturer thing so that the local middle class no longer exists because they're not doing anything, they're idle. And not only is their wealth perpetually evaporating, but on top of it, the super wealthy get to manipulate the currency exchange, so they get to pay pennies in China while giving the same buying power in China that they're getting here. And then as soon as it comes across the ocean, it's worth 100 times as much money. And because of the unique situation in China, the fact that they're paying them a hugely discrepant wage doesn't influence their economy in the same way. I don't know. I encourage you to look up how effed up China is, because China. I'm not saying that China's not better. China sucks, but China and America are part of this Faustian bargain that has created a, class of wildly over-resourced individuals that the only reason that they have all these resources is because they were positioned where they are positioned. They were literally born into them, and they have such an outsized influence on our society, but they have such a small view of the reality of it. I mean, uh, you know, the it's simulation and simulacra, and they're seeing all the simulacra, and they've surrounded themselves by bootlickers, and they aren't in their positions because of talent or skill and intelligence, and they have outsized power because of because of the force multipliers they get to utilize with their wealth, because those force multipliers didn't exist before in the same ways they do now. I mean, you think about technology, certain technology can increase your productivity so immensely, and so few people have access to those things. When you think about truly immensely productive enhancing items, automated manufacturing devices, a literal workforce, a human workforce, computers, you could say software like AI, even though that's just really plagiarism. I contributed to GTP3, and you have to remember that intelligence requires a motivation that took billions of years to insert into humanity, and that's, a lot of what's being exploited is these dopamine systems. But regardless, we are motivated to eat and sleep and, reproduce, all these other different things. But that motivation, how do you instill it? And without it, are you actually creative? Really, all the AI right now is just machine learning, and how there is a distinction there is difficult to describe, but the AI isn't really creative. It is just taking shit that the populace has produced, and it's fitting something that's already been produced, that it's had access to, manipulating it to the situation, but not really. I mean, it's just stealing from you. You're a more creative population than you're given credit for. You're a smarter population than you're given credit for. Stop letting them convince you you're stupid. Please. Because of the restriction of press and the way that the internet intentionally takes reality and makes it more flowery, essentially the reality of what's going on in the world is being snuffed out of the only record that exists now, which is the internet, because there is no local press. And so the fact of this wild and disgusting oppression, the fact that it's not being recorded, that it's being effectively suppressed using the bullshit simulacra of the internet, is really frustrating, and please wake up to it. Hey, next year go Tigers, hey, whatever, go Lions. Even though I know that the sports culture is a means of distraction, it also can be a means to bring us together. It really can. But, the problem too is that the financial element, the fact that this entire society has been financialized, and then the wealth element has been so manipulated to impoverish those, that, I don't want to do anything. I refuse to work towards an unethical ends. So it's made. And then I also give money to causes that I find justified, so it makes it difficult to amass wealth. But it seems like that's going to be necessary in order to exact influence on this current dastardly and disgusting situation I find myself in, and that we all really find ourselves in. Join me in improving this society. It's the best for us all, I promise you, including yourself, regardless of your situation. Even if you're one of the oppressors, I promise you, it will improve your life. To just stop being so stupid and shitty. You really can improve. Everyone can improve, man. It's like, I'll give you the pixie dust. It'll take some time, but if you invest, you'll improve. Do all the others. Please, 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 please subscribe. It actually is key to monetization. Please subscribe.